Good morning. Today is Tuesday. Chav Zayin Ir Tovshin Ayin Daled. We're in the Mamar of Sefer Mamorim, Teres Menachem, Sefer Mamorim, the Mamar Chamisha Kinyanim, Shabbos Pashas Bamidbar, Mevarchem HaChedesh, Erev Reish Chedesh Sivan Tovshin Yud Beis. We are on page Reish Pei Zayin, the beginning of the first paragraph on the page, the Oid. The Rebbe explained that the idea of Kinyan means something that is in the domain of Hashem, of Kedusha, or as he explains here, in Atzilus. Atzilus is called Kinyan because it reveals that which was concealed, much like a Kinyan that just moves an existing object from one domain to another domain. And then there is the idea of Kinyan that we have to effectuate in a number of, to be specific, 5 things in the world, meaning to say that we have to lift them into the realm of Atzilus. We have to lift them into the domain of Kedusha. And those 5 things are Torah, Shamayim va'aretz, Yisrael, Torah, Shamayim va'aretz, Avraham, Yisrael, and Beis HaMikdash. So the Rebbe began to explain that in Kinyanim, in acquisitions, in the act of Kinyan, there is Beshicha and there's Kesef. He brought the machlekes between the Shlakish and Rabbi Yechanan, whether Kesef is, whether Meshicha is explicit to the Torah. In other words, whether you acquire something just by drawing it into your domain, and then you become obligated to pay the money, or money also, or money is mentioned explicitly in the Torah, and you have to, in addition to that, it's an institution of the sages that you also have to do Meshicha to draw it, for the reasons explained earlier. The Rebbe explained this in the context of Isarusa del Eila and Isarusa del Lasata, Kesef being the Isarusa del Eila, the awakening from above, Meshicha being the Isarusa del Lasata, the awakening from below, and there's the Isarusa del Eila, the Kesef, the awakening from above that precedes the awakening from below, Meshicha, and then there is the Kesef that follows there's the Isarusa del Eila, the Kesef that follows the awakening from above, that follows the awakening from below, the Meshicha. And the Rebbe continued by explaining that in the 5 things, he first enumerates Torah. And the reason why he first enumerates Torah, even though chronologically the world was created first, is because Torah is rooted higher than the world. The world was created through the midas, through the emotional attributes. Chesed on Sunday, Gura on Monday, and so on and so forth. Torah is rooted in Mechin, in the intellectual faculties, intellectual attributes of the divine attributes of Atzilus. So they precede it in level. So he says like this: what's the idea of Chamisha Kinyanim Kana Kodesh Baruch Torah Kinyan Echad? Means to say that the first acquisition is Torah, meaning to say that I'm defined it in 2 ways. I'm sorry, that I'm defining it in 2 ways. We just learned the first way. The first way of defining Torah Kinyan Echad means that we have to draw down Torah, which is rooted in the intellectual faculties, in the intellectual divine attributes of Atzilus. We need to draw that down into the world in order to cause the world to be lifted up into the domain, the Rishus HaYochid, the singular domain, the private domain, meaning to say the domain of Hashem. And that follows, that's why the Mishnah follows that with Shamayim va'aretz kinyan echad, which means to say that through drawing Torah into the heavens and the earth, that causes them to be lifted up into the singular, the private domain of Hashem. However, the simple definition of the Mishnah is that Torah is one of those things that need to be acquired, right? Because it says Torah kinyan echad, Shamayim va'aretz kinyan echad, Avraham kinyan echad, and so on and so forth. In other words, the Mishnah sort of enumerates, relates to Torah in the same bracket as the others. So now the Rebbe goes on and explains that aspect of Torah as one of those 5 which also need acquisition. That's where we're up to. Page Reish Pei Zayin at the top, the first paragraph. There's another aspect to this idea of Torah being one of the acquisitions. That the Torah itself, is one of the 5 Kinyanim acquisitions that exist in the world, whose creation is from Midas. We explained until now that Torah is the first one because although chronologically the world was created first, Torah is rooted higher because it's rooted in the 3 intellectual divine attributes of Atzilus, whereas the world is rooted where? It's created through what? The midah is, right? the emotional divine attributes of Atzilus. So he says over here that another aspect of Torah is that the Torah itself is one of the 5 acquisitions that are in the world that was created through the emotional attributes of Atzilus. How does that work? Torah is related to the intellectual, so how is it within the world which is created by the emotional attributes and it needs to be acquired, lifted? Hainu, he explains, Chamisha Kinyanim, these 5 acquisitions, Keilulim, they include as Klolos Amidas. They encapsulate the generality, the totality of all the midas, of all the emotional attributes. So in other words, these 5 things that he enumerates, Torah, Shamayim Avram, Torah, Shamayim Va'aretz, Avram, what's the order again? Torah, Shamayim Va'aretz, Avraham, Yisrael, and Beis HaMikdash, these 5 things that he enumerates in the Mishnah, they are the totality of the midas. Avraham hu b'chinas hachesed. We know that in the spiritual sense, Avraham represents what? Chesed of Atzilus, K'meshe Kosav Avraham Oyavi. Right? Avraham is referred to as the one that loves Hashem. Ahava emanates from where? Love emanates from the attribute of Chesed. Torah, he b'chinas Gevura. Torah represents Gevura, the attribute of Gevura, strictness. As it says in the beginning of the 10 Commandments, and Hashem was saying to us, we were hearing the 10 Commandments from Hashem, it says, Vayidaber Elikim Geir Medavke. Right? It doesn't say Vayidaber Hashem. Yud Kei Vav Kei, we know refers to what? Chesed. Elikim is Midas Adin, right? Is Gevura, strictness. Vayidaber Elikim is called Devarim Eila. When he starts speaking the Sefer Adibris, Hashem says, the pasuk refers to Hashem as what? As Elikim. That indicates Gevura. So too, the sages say in the Talmud, in Gemara Makis, in Masechta Makis, it says over there that the numerical value of Torah, that Hashem gave us 613 mitzvahs, because the numerical value of Torah is what? 611. So the Gemara says, what are the 2? Where are the 2? So the Gemara says, the other 2, Anechi v'layir because Anechi, the first 2 of the 10 Commandments, Anechi and Layir lecha mipia gvura shemayim, we heard them from the mouth of Hashem Himself. The other 611 were transmitted to us from Hashem via Moshe Rabbeinu, right? So, and when he refers to Hashem, he refers to him as mipi hagvura, from the mouth of the strictness, the strength, referring to Hashem with the term gvura. So we see that Torah is related to what? To the idea of Gvura. Gvura Daik. Yisrael. So far we have Chesed and Gvura. What's Yisrael? Forget about the chronological order for a moment. Why? Because in the Mishnah he first mentions Torah and so on and so forth. But let's just look at how these things refer to the Midas. Yisrael is a reference to what? Noisef Lakach Shekoyal Klolos Al Zo Klolos Midas. In addition to the fact that Yisrael refers generally to Zo, the 6 midas, which is the generality of midas. When you talk about it more specifically, Koyal B'chinas Tiferes. It's a reference to what? To the midah of Tiferes. Kava Emtzoi, the central line, Shekel Chesed Gevura, which includes within it Chesed Gevura. We know that in the organization of the midas, of the attributes of the spheres, there are, in addition to the fact that there are 10, they're also organized in the form of 3 segels, right? Chochma, Bina, Das, Chochma on the right, Bina on the left, Das in the middle, Chesed on the right, Gvura on the left, Tiferes in the middle, right? So Tiferes is Kavo Emtzoi, that's the central line. So in other words, in addition to the fact that each of the midas precede each other or follow each other, Chochma precedes Bina, Bina precedes Das, and so on and so forth, those that are on the right side have a special link to each other. So Chochma, Chesed, and Netzach have a special connection. Bina, Gvura, and Hoid have a special connection, and Das, Tiferes, and Yesod also have a special connection, and there's a uniqueness in the middle, the central line, that it goes all the way from the top to the bottom with in an unbroken link. If you also look at the way the body of the human being is constructed, So you have the kava yamin, kava small, and kava mitzvah. You have the right part of the body, the left part, and the central part. So the right and left, although they're connected to each other, they extend, and there are parts of that of the body on the right and on the left, parts of the limbs on the right and on the left that are not connected to each other, right? Whereas the central part of the person is an unbroken unit, right? So that refers to Tiferes, which is Kava Emtzai. Yisrael is Kava Emtzai, which is Tiferes, which is Kava Emtzai, and Yisrael is, of course, who? Another name for whom from the three forefathers, Yaakov. And we know that in the Spheres, Avram is Chesed, Yitzchak is Gvura, and Yaakov is who? Tiferes. So Yisrael is Tiferes, right? Kava Emtzai shekoyel Chesed Gvura. Shamayim va'aretz, the heavens and the earth, koyel b'chinas Yisod. That's a reference to the attribute of Yisod, the second it's the end of the middle line, right? As we say in davening after Baruch Hashem in Vayivorech David, L'cha Hashem Hagdula, which is Chesed, V'Hagvura, which is Gvura, V'Tiferes, V'Netzach, V'Ha'id. So we have Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, and Ha'id, and then it follows by saying Kichoel B'Shamayim V'Aretz. So he says Shamayim. So Shamayim V'Aretz, which is another one of the 5 things that he mentions in the Mishnah. That's a reference to the level of Yesod, foundation. As it says in the verse, which you say in davening, it's from Divrei Hayamim, Yichel B'Shamayim V'Aretz. And the Targum over there defines this as meaning the Ochid B'Shmayo Ba'ara, the one who is one in the heavens and in the earth. Shu B'chinas Yisod, which is a reference to Yisod. First of all, the numerical value of Choil is what? Chaf Lamed is what? 50. What's the numerical? No, it's not 50. It's Choil is 50, yes.
No, 38.
It's 50. What's the...
Lamed is 30, right?
20.
Ches is 8.
Chol. It's not Ches.
Chol. 20. Oh, cool. That's cool.
Talk about Malchus, what is it?
Yeah, you're right.
400 and 496.
Check with this Navi Theodor.
Just slipped my mind now, but there is a
496.
yeah. So when you look at the words ki chayil combined, what's the numerical value of ki chayil?
Kichol.
80. So 80. Chayil is begematria. Ki chayil is begematria. Is the numerical value of 80. Yesod is the numerical value of what? 80. So that's number 1. That's how ki chayil is related to Yesod. And also the Ochid B'Shmai Ba'ara is a reference to Yesod. The Targum says ki chayil B'Shmai Ba'ara because for all is in the heavens and the earth, right? So the Targum says because he is one in the heavens and the earth, and Chassidus explains this as meaning that it combines the heavens and the earth. In Kabbalistic terminology, I believe in the Midas, Tiferes is called heaven, and Malchus is called earth. Or maybe going back to the Moichin, it's called heaven, and Malchus is called earth. Means the highest levels and the lowest levels. Yesod is the one that connects the highest levels to the lowest levels. Right? So that's the sphere of Yesod. Ubeis HaMikdash, that's the 5th thing that the Mishnah enumerates. Ubchinas Malchus. Beis HaMikdash is the idea of Malchus. So as it says in the Pasuk, also the Mikdash v'shechanti b'seicham, you should construct for me a Mikdash, a temple, and I will dwell within them. So the Mikdash is for the purpose of what? V'shechanti. So that the Shechina, Hashem's divine presence, can rest among mortals in this world. Shechina dafka. And if you remember, the Koy Shechina is a reference to what? B'chinas HaMalchus. Shechina is a reference to the attribute, the level of Malchus, which dwells and clothes itself in the lowest realms. And if you cast your mind back to the first Maimer that we learned, Over there, he says that Shechina, right? What is Shechina? If you go all the way back to the Maimer, there's a lashon over there. There's an expression in that Maimer that Shechina refers to Malchus Atzilus, and it's Bechol Madrege Kifi Inyana. It's at every level according to its inyan. So in Atzilus, it's Malchus Atzilus, higher would be Malchus of Yisov. But the bottom line is that when you say Shechina, which specific divine attribute are we referring to? To Malchus. So Bekitzer, the bottom line is that the 5 things that are enumerated in the Mishnah, between them, they encapsulate and they symbolize the totality of the Midas. Torah being, let's go in the order that he enumerates. Avraham being Chesed, Torah being Gvura, Yisrael being Tiferes, Shamayim va'aretz, referring to Yisod, Zohar and Tiferes, right? Shamayim va'aretz referring to Yisod, and Beis HaMikdash referring to Malchus. So in Torah, so what's the bottom line? Before in the Mishnah, when the Rebbe explained Torah, he referred to it as something which we need to draw down into the heavens and the earth for the purpose of lifting it up higher. But then there's an aspect in Torah which is also already within the domain of quote unquote the world, which also needs to be lifted. And the Rebbe is going to explain which aspect of Torah we're talking about. Let's just say, let's just learn another couple lines. So now we have 2 interpretations in Torah. One is the Torah, like I just said, is outside of the world of these other things that need to be lifted, and that causes it to be lifted. And then there is Torah as it is part of it. We can connect these 2 aspects in this explanation that Torah is one of the acquisitions. What are the 2 aspects? The first aspect, the first explanation in Torah is that Torah is beyond world, which is created from the emotional attributes of Atzilus, and Torah is what is beyond it because it's from the intellectual. And then the second aspect in Torah, that it's one of the 5, which include them between them. The emotional attributes, Torah being one of them, referring to what? To Gvura. So to combine these 2 interpretations and these 2 aspects of Torah, first by prefacing the explanation of why Torah is associated with Gvura. The Lechura, it would seem, it would seem that Torah is really what? Is not Gvura. Torah is what? Chesed. As it says in the verse, V'Torah is Chesed. Where is that verse? Quickly. Pi ha-pascha b'chachma v'Torah is Chesed al l'sheina. It's in Mishlei, it's in Eishos Chayil, we say it every Friday night. Right? A little louder, Harris. V'Torah is Chesed. So Torah is referred to as what? As Chesed. V'gam also Oiraisa michachma nafkas. Where does Torah emanate from? What's the root of Torah? Chachma. The divine attribute of Chachma. Chachma is in which line in the juxtaposition of the midas? In terms of lines, the right, the left, and the middle. Chachma is in which kav? Kav yamin. The Chachma be kav yamin. It's on the right side, which is related to what? The Chesed. So why do we say the Torah is Gvura? So there must be something in Torah which, although it's Chesed, there's an aspect in Torah which is Gvura. What is it? The explanation is that the fact that when we say the Torah is the aspect of Gevura, strictness, from Kavas Mol, who al derech ha'inyan, it's similar to this idea of Gevuras Kshamim, very strong rains. Shiur b'Gevura, rain that falls with great force. So what's rain? Is rain Chesed or Gevura? Rain is really what? Chesed. But when it pours, when it rains very, very hard, that's Gevuras Kshamim. So you have that aspect of Gevura within the Chesed. When you say Gevura, the idea of tzimtzum, contraction, withholding, that's related to what? To Gevura. So when it's pure Gevura, it's tzimtzum l'shem tzimtzum. It's pure tzimtzum, pure contraction. But when you say Gevuras Kshamim, for example, when you say giving forcefully, giving very strongly, we're not talking about tzimtzum ba'ifin shel din, a contraction in a mode of strictness of withholding, for the purpose of withholding. Ela adarab, on the contrary, you're talking about the re-energizing, the reinforcing of the energy. Because when you want to bestow, when something with an abundant light or an abundant energy, that necessarily must come through the aspect of gvuras, through some level of strictness. So in other words, it's like this: if you want to give more, there's. I mean, one of the metaphors is like a dam. For example, you withhold the water, a blockage. You block it, and what happens was it builds and builds and builds and builds, and then it comes through with a great force, right? That's one aspect. Another aspect is that the tzimtzum over here is the idea of dividing up the drops of water, dividing up the water into droplets, in order that the flow that's being bestowed should be able to be received. As our sages say in Gemara, if 2 drops of rain would come out from the same mold, as it were, from the same place, it would have completely destroyed the world. In other words, in order for the rain to be able to be received, it's much like the difference between water using a hose with one forceful a spout that gives one forceful a jet spout, or you have a spout where it's more like a what's it called, a spray spout, right? So you can give a lot of water, but in a spray spout, and that allows it to be received. Otherwise, it becomes you drown it out. Well, that is a potato. Similarly in Torah, you also have these 2 aspects. You have its chesed, but then there's also the aspect of gvura, where it's with more abundance, and the tzimtzum is there for the purpose of what? Of it being able to be received by those upon whom it's being bestowed.